And the therapist, we had mentioned several times, and we'll be mentioning over and over again, those 4 words. What upholds your existence? As happy as me, you'll never see. I've done a lot of traveling, and by and large, no people on the face of the earth are as defensive as we are in America. Hands down, I don't think any country is even a close second. And some countries are entirely different. People have no apparent defenses. They're open, friendly, trusting. For instance, the Newfoundlander is a perfect example of a type of personality and character that just goes along from day to day in a very normal way. So it's not that they're so extraordinary in and of itself, but they're normal.
Right.
As opposed to we are definitely not.
Yeah.
It's our nature.
It's not natural.
No.
Right.
It's our nature to protect ourselves, and we know that. So in that regard, basic defenses are necessary. I guess that's been true since the dawn of humankind. We have to be protected from the beast, the monster, the weather, whatever it might be. So that's normal. If you're in a storm, you're going to try and take refuge. You're going to try and find a place where you're safe. Mm-hmm. And under normal conditions, if something unusual happens, you have to react. For instance, some months back, I'd left my car in Queen Anne one day, so I was going to take the bus, and I'm walking down the street here about 9 o'clock at night, and a person who obviously was in trouble was waving at the world and screaming and threatening everything in sight. And he's coming right toward me. Instinctively, from my background, my reaction is to get ready to be violent, because I grew up in East Harlem, where violence was a normal part of living, and before I learned to channel it into boxing in a more normal fashion, I was violent. It's still in me, and that's my first, but my mind kicks in and I say, cross the street and get out of the way. So I avoid any kind of physical violence that way. But there still is the need to defend. In the process of moving across the street, I wasn't, to some degree, defending myself, protecting myself. So those things are pretty normal for the human being and for creatures in general. Mm-hmm. A spider got caught in my sink yesterday. It happens maybe 5 or 6 times a year. And I know from a fact that spider cannot get up there. As clever as they are, it cannot. So I have to take a little thing, and of course the spider is frightened and running all over the place. 10 minutes to finally get him to realize that he should plop onto the stick so I can save him. So we have to defend to some degree, but because we're designed that way. We experience fear, uncertainty, weakness, lack of intelligent guidance, and we're left to our own devices, and that's where the problem begins. We begin learning protective mechanisms from our parents and others at an early stage in our development, and life's challenges force us to rely on those defenses. Now that starts happening when we're very young, and nobody's going to explain it to us. Our parents rarely, if ever, are going to sit us down and say, look, there are times when we have to put on a face, an image, where we have to kind of act a certain way in order to satisfy certain people. And it's an act, it's okay. It's not meant to be a permanent thing in life or to make you feel that you can't just be normal. They don't even go as far as to explain that to us. Yeah. We just begin to see things. And it doesn't really register until about the age of 3 and 4. And then it begins to leave its mark. We begin to mirror what we see happening with our parents and with our relatives and people that we live near. And again, no one instructs us to copy that. No one tells us, you should be this way also. But it's quite natural for young people to mimic and copy what they see in others. And then we're sent into the world of education. And now we're going to be instructed. And along with what we learn in terms of subject matter, we also learn all of the negative things that begin to befall us. We learn how to be defensive. We learn how to put up some means of protection against things that are not necessarily harmful or frightening or anything else. Simply, whatever we don't understand or know, we react to, out of fear. I learned it very quickly because the nature of the people in my family, and that includes the extended family, was extremely defensive. The members of my family and people like my godparents and my neighborhood community people all reacted out of any fear with anger, rage, negativity. If they didn't understand something, they'd want to smash it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I copied it, of course. And the first time I discovered that I could actually control another human being, I got into a street fight at the age of about 6, and I was very overweight, and my weight overcame this person, and I suddenly realized that I had the upper advantage. And from that first place on, I continued to develop my defensive nature against anything that I might react to that I didn't understand or that I was potentially afraid of, and would strike out at it. So we develop these things moment by moment over a period of time, and after a while they become part of our personality and our character. We become these defensive creatures. We learn protective mechanisms from the parents, and they go on from there. The process of learning defenses involves both the body, gestures, postures, and expressiveness. I remember the looks more than anything. My father was in business with 2 of his cousins, and when I walked past these people, I'd get these negative snarls, literally. They would just snarl at me.
Why?
It was their nature to do it. It was the way they handled anything they didn't like.
But why didn't they like you?
They thought I was laborious. They thought I was too curious.
Oh.
And they thought I was too curious because they were thieves, and they were frightened that I might say something to my father.
They saw that you were observant.
Yeah, they saw I noticed, and they didn't like to be noticed. So they would snarl. In fact, both my cousins, who unfortunately my father was in business with, were snarlers, very nasty people.
Wow.
So you see the expressions, and again, you begin to take on these expressions without someone instructing you and telling you to snarl or anything else. And then the language, and the attitudes, the deliberateness and the emotions follows. You're on the street. I remember in Manhattan at that time in East Harlem, walking out in the street one day, and in the course of about 15 minutes, I heard 3 different people singing a song. Hey, ba-ba-loo, ba-ba, and it was a filthy song.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was very dirty. I didn't know it though. I had no idea. They were singing, your mother's in jail, your father's out on bail, your sister's round the corner. I didn't want to tell you that. And I didn't know any better. So I started, other people doing it, and I went home and I sang that song. And my mother, the only time in my lifetime that she smacked me, and I didn't understand it.
No.
But again, we learn things. We begin to pick up everything. First the expression, then we get these languages, these words, these sentences, and we begin to copy them, and sometimes we expand upon them ourselves. We put in our own experiences, and we begin to develop our own defensive style. Because, again, nobody is instructing us. We're simply beginning to be molded by all the things going on in our personal lives, in our society, the internal and the external, and we're being shaped without even realizing it.
And each of us is different, so how we react to whatever as we're growing when we're little, you know, we're all different.
Right.
So.
Every one of us is different, yeah. That's why some people have 5 or 6 major defenses, and some people have 4 or 5, some people have 14. Sometimes I'm asked about personality disorders and split personalities. I've had people come to me with 6, 7, 8, 15 different personalities, and I'll tell them there's nothing unusual about that. We're made up of many different things, and we can have 400 personalities, and it's really not a disease as much as it is we have the ability to shift gear and be many different people under many different conditions. So all of these things are quite part of the whole makeup of the human being and the way we protect ourselves in life. As defenses form into habits, they become more sophisticated, complicated, timely, specialized, and lead to a permanent and usually unchangeable system of overall protection against all types of human disagreement and confrontation. We now have to, as we're getting older, react to all sorts of different things. Now we're figuring out all the different angles as well. How do I pass a test? How do I cheat? How do I get away from that person? How do I fake someone here? How do I get away with things? We're learning to move about and get along in life.
Scared animals.
Oh yeah, just exactly.
Yeah.
Scared animals,
Yeah.
confused animals, untrained animals, uninstructed, and as usual, no one to stop and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it.
Doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this way.
They get programmed here in a society by the people that you used to look up to, government officials.
Everyone,
or,
right
you know,
down the line,
yeah,
right down the line.
Where can they not if they don't have the brain to ask themselves, is this so? Is this really so? Or
But we don't even give ourselves the opportunity, and certainly the classroom doesn't offer us the opportunity. We're taught subjects, we're taught history and English and language and science and grammar, but we're not taught about integrating life. And we're not taught about the basics that we need.
integrating ourselves to each
nothing,
other.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
I needed to know how to solve problems at home. I needed to know what to do, at home to deal with the madness in my family. No one taught me that. I needed to know how to walk down the street without getting my butt kicked.
Right.
Nobody taught me that.
Right.
We didn't get these tools. We didn't get any form of problem solving or nurturing in those areas.
Especially from those older generations. I think it's changed. Some of that's changing with parenting now, but certain groups of privileged parents or whatever.
Well, I think also we used to have extended families living around us. Great aunts, great uncles, grandparents, who could give us that wisdom, of...
You mean like 500 years ago?
No.
I didn't.
No.
So.
You didn't.
No.
Some people did have extended families, and certainly it's more part of other cultures,
Right.
and it's quite natural.
Yeah.
And we had it when I was a child to some degree, but that began to dissipate, and then, like all other things, we lost track of it basically as a normal part of our life. We're afraid to look bad. Instead of being open and honest, we're afraid to look bad. That's one of the reasons we're so defensive. We go out of our way to present an image of ourselves in a particular way. I remember going to this place I've mentioned many times, Daytop Village. It was a facility for hardcore narcotic addicts who had been paroled there. I went there to do research and to turn my life around. There were 105 human beings, men and women, all felons, all dope addicts, people who had committed every crime you could mention, including murder. On the surface, you might say these were the scum of society. And I walked into there with my image. I come to do some research. And as I was walking, being guided through this beautiful mansion, in Staten Island, I began to feel pain in my chest first. And after a while, I began to have a hard time breathing. It felt like I had been punched right in the solar plexus, and I'd been punched that way in boxing, so I knew what it felt like, and here I was just walking and being shown through this house. And by the time we got into the basement, I could barely breathe, and I was perspiring, and the guy looked at me and said, "Put away your pen and talk about it." And the words just, I can't tell you how they struck me. Talk about it. I've been wanting to talk about it since I was a child, and I realized at that moment also what I was feeling. I was in a house with 105 people, all of whom were acting in a normal way. And I was the only one who wasn't. I came there with my image. And I certainly felt uncomfortable with myself because the pretense was so clear to me. I've been great on doing this on stage. I've been a professional actor for many years, and I could do all of that on stage in front of an audience. I could be whoever the character was, and I could cry and laugh. But once I got off stage, I had this image that I had to present. And it took me many, many months before I began to finally let that image go and just be myself there. They had to confront me day in and day out and tell me to talk about it, deal with it, and I would do nothing but get defensive. I'd go into therapy groups and shout and curse and scream at them and say, "What the hell do you bums know, you lousy dope fiend?" Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, you got it, absolutely. I was just like my Uncle Alex, exactly like him. Only I didn't realize it. I never made the connection. It took months and months before I began to finally realize that something was wrong. And I remember when it happened, I attended a 40-hour marathon, a group marathon. And what happens in a group marathon, when you go past 15, 16, 18 hours, you become exhausted, of course. And once you get so tired, you begin to let down the defenses. You begin to, it's hard to hold up that image when you're knocked out that way and you're with 15 other people who are being themselves. So it wore me down gradually. By the end of the marathon, I felt like I was bleeding from about 20 emotional wounds. And I sat down in the living room and lit a cigarette and just sat there. And one of the people who had been in the marathon, a man named Jose Bly, very gentle, sweet human being, not at all confrontational, not one to vent. Dear Jose went on years later to form, I think, 3 or 4 different facilities on the West Coast that helped many thousands of people, God bless him. Anyway, Jose just sat there with me and lit a cigarette, and he looked at me and said, "You don't understand, do you, Nickolas?" And I said, "No, Jose, I don't. And he waited and waited about 5 minutes, and finally, in the most gentle way, he looked at me and said, "Nickolas, there's something wrong with you." And I swear to God, it's like your knuckles snap, a bone in my brain.
Right.
And finally, I got it. There's something wrong with me. It wasn't my dear lousy cousins. It wasn't the Greek Orthodox Church. It wasn't the streets. It wasn't, all that had happened, yeah, but now it was me. There was something wrong with me. And that was the first time I actually said, oh. And it took 9 months of this battering from people who basically invented reality and confrontational and encounter therapy. These were the masters at it. And it took them 9 months to get through my shell.
So what was beneath the shell?
Oh, terror, always. And the inability to express the pain I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't allow myself to cry.
Yeah.
I stopped crying at the age of 5. And my father told me he couldn't get the bike he had promised me. And I cried for about 45 minutes, but there was nothing that could be done. And I never cried again, except on a stage in front of an audience where it was easy.
So then did you cry during this therapy stuff?
I
release for
slowly began to get in touch with expressing feelings.
Did you also feel like if you let go of all those defenses, there'd be nothing there?
I couldn't even intellectualize it at the time. Later on, I began to piece that together mentally. But all I know is at the beginning, it was so hard just to allow myself to feel. My father, God rest his soul, was a very loving man, but he held everything in. He never expressed his pain, kept it, and of course he died at the age of 47.
So he didn't do the rage thing like your other...
No, he was not, that was his two partners were the rage people. No, there were enough others in the family who could pick up the rage part.
I mean, that's kind of what I do, and what I feel made me ill, is that I held everything in, actually in ways I didn't defend myself. I didn't think I was allowed to.
You said it perfectly earlier when you were describing yourself. Yeah, that all came together that way. And as I mentioned, and I have mentioned many times, the basis of everything I teach is related to expressing feelings, understanding and expressing human feelings in a normal way, which we as Americans do not do. Culturally, we are taught to not do this. Don't cry. Don't be frightened. Don't be angry. What we call negative feelings, but which are not negative feelings, but which are normal feelings, including anger. One of the things that must be learned in order to not be defensive and in order to not be injured by repressed feelings is how to be angry. Anger is a natural, normal emotion. There's nothing wrong with anger. What's wrong with anger is that we have bastardized it along with other emotions and distorted what it really is and convinced people, an entire nation, that there's something bad about anger. A player on, I think it was the Philadelphia Phillies, about 7 months ago was arrested for domestic violence, beating up on his girlfriend. Brought into court, he's sentenced to, I think, 60 days in jail, and he must attend anger management classes for anger management. He's getting violent. Anger is not violence. That's the thing we don't understand. Anger is, I feel anger. If you do something to hurt me, to frighten me, to deceive me, I can feel anger. It's normal. It's my feeling. That's different than, shut your mouth or I'll kick your teeth in. That's threat. Or you're a dirty, lousy. That's vileness. Or the violence. As I said a number of times, thousands of times over the last 40 or 50 years, our society not only is the most depressed society in the face of the earth, again, no nation is even a distant second to us, we're also the most violent society, and there's a direct correlation between the two. Because we're not allowed to express our anger, we can only do something else with it, which is to repress it where it festers inside of us and does a lot of damage, or it comes out with the vileness, the hostility, the threat, and the violence. So anger is not a bad guy. It does not need management or medication. It needs to be understood and expressed in a normal way. My wife and I have been married for 43 years. We have a wonderful relationship. It gets better and better. It's never been so wonderful as it is. We get angry at one another. It's very normal.
But I think that's what we don't know, what is okay in expressing anger. And then people who go over the line, it's not okay.
No, it's not okay, but that's...
Like, where are those...
The parameters are right there. I feel. It's what I feel. What you feel is what you feel. Both of us have a right to feelings, and neither of us can say, you haven't got a right to feel.
I know, but you get to yell at me?
If I feel bad enough, I might yell. I've yelled at my wife. I feel angry at you, honey. Come on, stop this. You're hurting me. The fact that I'm raising my voice is not a threat. It's, again, not the same as you are a dirty or I'm going to... No.
Right.
So the lines are clear, and you can establish them if you take the time to communicate and if you've got another partner who is willing to adjust accordingly.
Right.
Yeah, that's where we have to get things clarified. Yeah. And you can do that if you really have a relationship that's working and you're growing together and you're growing as individuals. You can sit down and communicate and say, hey, what do we do when we feel what we feel? I used to tell Nan when she would be hurt by something, If she'd be feeling a lot of pain, I would say, I'd rather you not tell me about that. So I wasn't even, being negative. I just didn't want, and I suddenly realized by doing that even, I'm closing her off.
You're
So yeah, with this,
controlling it.
yeah.
So I have a neighbor who we've been friends for more than a couple years, a man, and I have used the response sometimes to say, ouch. Whoa, it's a man, absolutely refuses. He doesn't want, and you can't shapeshift somebody who's adamantly against building something and growing. So when I use a simple thing, ouch, which is something I've learned along the way.
You mean you say that in reaction to something
his
he
comment
says?
to you hurts you?
Oh yeah, he's
Ouch.
attacking me.
I wasn't sure if you
Yeah.
were being empathetic about something that hurts him.
Oh no, good.
Okay.
No. And very interesting. He'll do it in the car if we go to do something together and just he's whatever reason, right? And I'll say and I've almost said please stop the car. I'll get out now, but I chose not to at that one time. So I just used it again, and I'm telling you, this man will not let feelings arise with anybody around except violent words, explosiveness, and like a wild animal who's
Well, what does he do when you say ouch?
attacks me more.
Right.
And then I've
Standard
responded,
operating procedure.
right, so I've said, and maybe I've raised my voice to say, I don't want to have a 5-foot wall of concrete around me and be the warrior. No, I want to be real and engaged, and this guy will not let it happen. So for, or if you do this or any of those, so.
Well,
Yeah.
what sounds like that trigger is either fight or flight instead of like what you were saying, I feel. And then it's not an attack on you, it's I feel this way. But I know for me, the response is flight. I withdraw from the situation rather than face into those difficult emotions. Whereas some people, it triggers the anger and the hostility. I shouldn't say anger, it's the violence and the hostility that's more of an attack mode as opposed to an expression mode.
You're talking also about how to engage in conflict. We don't learn how to do that. It's
exactly.
like if someone's angry, you either run away or you yell back.
Yeah.
Instead of
Instead of taking in the feeling and saying, I'm
also,
sorry.
then it's okay because it's their feeling.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the difference right there. Someone is expressing what they're feeling. They're not trying to hurt you or attack you.
Right.
And that's where you draw the line. The minute it turns from I feel to you are,
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Then
exactly
that's
what
the
this
shift.
guy did.
Yeah,
He was
that's-
personalizing it. But is it when you say, I feel hurt, that's what ouch is, that hurts, that's the bully.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was too, so there's some people, when you go out, some people will turn around and walk away. This is,
They will get defensive in any
That-
case.
that
Very
can
few
trigger the
people,
defenses,
very few
yeah.
people understand the importance of simply taking in what you're feeling and accepting the fact that you are feeling that
Yeah.
and that it's okay.
it's okay.
There's
Because
nothing.
we can't do it with ourselves. I never could accept, I didn't know I was allowed to feel angry.
Yeah, of course.
So then how do you accept it in someone else? So I would put, when someone else got angry with me, I'd get angry. Because I wasn't, I was stuffing my feelings or whatever.
We are all we're microcosms of this greater society, and we all end up being trained to behave in this defensive way. Because again, there is no school of learning. Everyone there should be a daytop kind of facility in every community where we can all go and finally learn how to deal with our emotions and what they are.
So why isn't there one?
Why? Because
The system won't let us?
the system, I'll
It's not valid.
I'll give you the perfect
like to
answer
know.
why there isn't one. Number one, you can't make money from it. Simple as that. There's no money to be made on emotions.
So give it away.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't work that way. You've got major organizations, companies conglomerates that don't want you to do that. They want you to think that your emotions are a problem and need to be medicated and managed. So they're the teachers, they're the law out there.
But why, okay, the law, but why can't one do grassroots with seeing things?
You can, but you can spend, dear heart, I've spent almost 50 years now doing exactly what you're talking about, and I've touched many lives. So over a period of 50 years, maybe I've touched personally several thousand lives, but we're talking about 350 million people. So you can affect yourself, the people around you, your community, your family, to keep on going. I've been doing it, I've been fighting this all this time, and I'm happy and I'll keep on doing it, but nobody is interested on a massive national level because people are not open. I'll give you an answer number 2. Beside the fact that there's no money in emotions unless you are a performing artist or an evangelist, number 2, we are a very ignorant society. Very, very ignorant. We are not a society of individuals. We're not a society of people who really develop the ability to ask questions and discern. No. We can't discern on any level. I'll give you as a perfect example. Politics. Our national leaders do nothing but lie in our faces. We don't discern. We are still thinking, well, I guess they must know. Our doctors lie to us, our educators lie to us, our teachers lie to us, the professors lie to us, the lawyers lie to us, the religious leaders, everyone lies. And we know they're lying. Do we confront? Do we at least acknowledge, hey, you're a liar? No. We're afraid to.
There are people, if I may say that. I mean, I think things are, there are, through the different ways that people are standing up.
Yes, there are people.
Not the scared sheep that are still well fed.
Bill Maher does that.
Right, Bill, he really sticks his neck out. The woman who's running on the Green Party, who chained herself to the chair,
What you're saying is 100% correct. There are individuals.
And The Tipping Point, the book by that Russian, what is his name? The Tipping Point. I mean, I look at that. It takes giraffe people, and we are all, and it is kind of the ball.
It's part of the human evolution, though. I think it's going to happen because we spent all this time thinking about all this other stuff, and it's not working. And that's why I think there are seeds of it, and in like 200 years, if the planet still exists, I think things will be different.
I hope
200
so.
Years?
200 years? Actually,
I'll go. Really want to wait that long?
The man.
No, I'm saying for it to really be different. For the
It
future
is.
to really be different.
It
Yeah, 200
is.
years. There's still so much.
I'm sorry, I disagree with you.
And
And how long, my
don't think it
teacher,
is.
Tucker, when asked how long it would take mankind to finally turn things around, and I consider Tucker to be the most intelligent.
Who is it, please?
His name is Tucker, Thakur, an
T-A-
Indian,
T-H-A-U.
Tucker, Thakur. You can find him on YouTube. He died in 1969. He was an Indian spiritual teacher and master, considered to be God by millions of people and followed by the likes of Mahatma Gandhi. And when Tucker was asked about the human condition and how long it would take to turn it around, he said about 10,000 years.
Yeah, I believe that.
And,
Okay.
I think in 200 years there'll be a change from what it is now. Slight
we can evolve in many different directions, obviously, but I stick to the idea. I wish it was different. I wish it was different, but 80% of the people are downright ignorant, stubborn. They refuse to learn on any level. And yes, there are the exceptions. There are wonderful people, but unfortunately, there are not enough of them, and we don't have great, big, wonderful models in our world today. When I grew up as a child of 5, 6, 7, 8, going through the Depression, the Second World War, by the age of 8, I could have named at least 20 figures who I respected. The Adenauers, the Churchills, the de Gaulles, the Roosevelts, I didn't have to agree with everything they said, but they were respected human beings. They were models.
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt was my personal model. I thought of her as, you know, the great exception to humankind's madness. But today, who do we have?
I know, it's.
We have the last ones I know of are Nelson Mandela, and then who? I look in American society.
We have a lot of women.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they're
talking about
The
major models, people that we really feel
The
we
masses,
identify
the
with.
masses.
Yeah. Again, Eleanor Roosevelt, everyone felt they knew her
Yeah.
personally. She was a friend, a personal friend. We need figures like that. We don't have the models, unfortunately. We have spokespeople, we have individuals who write books and come out and say things,
Yeah.
and people like myself who are dedicated to what we believe in. But in terms of turning around a society that doesn't want to be turned around, that's going in one direction,
Yeah.
you're fighting against, you know,
Yeah, the culture won't
unbelievable.
allow it for
Sandy.
someone that big to be that, you know,
No.
that kind of person.
Coupled with denial and ego, defensiveness becomes an albatross around our necks, hindering and choking off the higher qualities and values that would otherwise enrich our lives. In the process, we are unwilling to say, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, forgive me. We can only resort to defending, denying, and ego. Defense, denial, and ego, the human condition with which we deal with ourselves and other people and society in general. And each one is very, very destructive. We refuse to let down our defenses. We refuse to admit to anything. We're all angels. The entire society is made up of people who are angels. Catch someone with his hand in your pocket, he's trying to grab your wallet and run, he's going to end up taking you to court and suing you for defamation.
Yeah.
He will not admit it. The church won't admit, no matter how many thousands of cases of child molestation and rape, the church refuses to admit it. Nobody admits anything. Bill Clinton never admitted anything. No president admits anything. John F. Kennedy turned the White House into a whorehouse. Would he have admitted it? The Secret Service agents all knew what was going on. They were laughing at it. They didn't even bother doing security checks anymore for these people.
From God's on board, each day I dine. From the Bering Straits to Palestine. This spring, this brook will ring the bell. No need of wealth. You're in God's hotel. Row on, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see. Represent for the world. Row on, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see. One should know, though, was Christ's motto. So do the same, let heaven flow, no pills, no